all, we want to thank you for tuning in once again to Lamb 2 Network. Once again, we just like to say thank you to Mark and those who are working with Mark and all who is at Lamb Radio Network. We are just excited, and I would begin to cough now right as I begin. But please excuse me as I go through these natural functions. But anyway, tonight we want to just once again just thank Lamb 2 Radio Network for all that they have done in establishing a YouTube channel where we can go in live stream. And now that we're doing live streaming, if anything has blessed you or any message out here has blessed you, please don't forget them in your donations. Click on to the network and press the donation button. And as well, I'm Rabbi James Byers from Melo HaGoyim, where the Torah is our lifestyle. And we too, if there's an opportunity for more donations, please go out to our website, melohagoyim.org, and press the donation button there as well. We love what we do. We love being able to bring the words to you of Yahweh, the word of truth. And so as we do this, just pray that Yahweh continues to bless us each week. So here we go. Let's go ahead and open in prayer. Yahweh, Heavenly Father, we praise you, we honor you, we thank you for your goodness, thank you for your mercy, thank you for your love, thank you for this time set apart, Father, to you, a time where we get to just talk to your people, Father, to share the word. Thank you for our set apart people, Father, in the nation where we just finished Hanukkah, Father, another set apart time, Father, and we say thank you for a time of dedication and all that you do. We just praise you and honor you in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, Yahweh, our Creator. Hallelujah. All right, so here we go. And if any of you are out there wanting to do chat, please do. And again, we're still trying to figure out how everything works, and we're learning the controls. And again, I'm just going to take it easy on what we do. That is what I'm doing in touching buttons. But anyway, I have a message that I'm going to be bringing to you this evening. Once again, I am Rabbi James Byers. I am the rabbi for Melo HaGoyim, fullness of the nations. And so as we go into our teaching this evening, the title is, Can You See the Signs or Hear the Trumpets? So I'm going to be using a screen this evening. And so as we flow through, just know that you can kind of, keep your eyes on me and where we are on the screen as well. All right, so I'm seeing I'm having a little bit of lighting issue. And so we'll see what we can do with that to remedy that. And not certain where the lighting issue is coming from, the camera or the monitor. But anyway, let's continue. We'll just move on, and we'll just do the best we can. All right, so let's begin to open up the signs. And the first one I want to open up is how to find Jubilee. Jubilee. That's a major point of information for us in this generation to begin to understand. Uh, and so I'm really, okay. That seemed to have done it. All right. That did a little better. Now let's get back with lighting here. Okay, so, and please forgive me on that. Again, we're trying to learn a little bit newer technology and what it takes to bring these to you, and the best we can. But anyway, here we go. Concerning Jubilee, which is every 50 years, and then the Shemitah, which is every 7 years. The Shemitah is a Hebrew word, which Jubilee is as well, which is called in the Hebrew Yobel, Jubilee as we understand it. And so the 7th year of release is both of these are laws for slavery, both the government and the slave himself. So if you're governing slaves, there's laws that are written concerning how long you can keep someone in servitude, and then the year of release. Leviticus chapter 25, verse 10. And you shall set the 50th year apart and proclaim release throughout all the land to all its inhabitants. It is a jubilee for you, and each of you shall return to his possession, and each of you return to his clan. Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 10. And Moshe commanded them, saying, at the end of 7 years, at the appointed time, the year of release, at the festival of booths. And so here's why we're taking a good look at both of these. With the 50th year, some may count every 49 years as Jubilee, but it's really the 50th year. So I went straight to the law itself that gives us the totality of what a Jubilee is. So 7 times 7 is 49. So that's your 7 Shemitahs, or year of release. And then add 1. And so in the 49th year, you are to proclaim the year of Jubilee, or Yobel, by sounding the 2 silver trumpets. And this is what they were instructed to do. Every 49 years, announce the 50th year. For a whole year, you are to celebrate with the coming of the year of Jubilee, so that everyone understands when Jubilee is going to happen. It doesn't just sneak up on you. There's a whole teaching around this. Prices decrease for slaves, land possessions decrease for owners. So I won't go into that. I have so much more, but let's just begin to understand that these are 2 very important timelines when it comes to slavery and Yahweh's deliverance from slavery. So Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 10 says, at the end of 7 years. So he's also pointing back to the year of Shemitah, or the Shemitah year, the 7th year. And so at the appointed time, the year of release, at the festival of booths. So he's given us some very keen insight here with very precise timing. And so with that said, I want you to imagine this is at the time of the 40th year. They're getting ready to go into Jerusalem, or Israel, the landmass itself. They're getting ready to cross Jordan River. And so we're crossing the river. This is the 40th year. Why would Moshe be saying in 7 years if he was talking to that generation? He was. But he was also talking to another generation that would be coming out of the nations. And so he's given us some very keen insight of which we don't need to be written to, and more on that when we get there. But I just want you to understand as we move through. Let's look at the 400th year. 400th year. All right. Again, I think I done hit some. If I'm still on the air, I'm not sure. So hopefully my wife will see you are about to join others.
You're on the air. You're on.
I'm on, but I can't see anything. So if I'm still on,
To the audience can hear and see everything you're doing. They can see me now.
okay. So
What did you do? You got rid of
I hit this by mistake and it turned my words around. See, the words are backwards. So, all right. I'm not sure what I did, but I'll continue. Yeah, I'll continue. All right. So anyway, you just have to kind of go with me on this. Reading it is going to be a little tough because whatever I did, I turned the words backwards. But anyway, let's look at the 400 years. Genesis chapter 15, verse 13 through 14. And he said to Abram, know for certain that your seed are to be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. But the nation whom they serve I am going to judge, and afterwards let them come out with great possession. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verses 1 through 4. Now, brothers, as to the times and the seasons, you do not need to be written to, for you yourselves know very well that the day of Yahweh comes as a thief in the night. For when they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction come upon them as labor pains upon a pregnant woman. And they shall not escape, but you, brothers, are not in darkness, so that this day should overtake you as a thief. Wow. So let's begin to decipher. 400 years is what Yahweh told Abraham. He said to Abraham, know for certain that your descendants would be enslaved and mistreated for 400 years. 400 years. Now, many people pass this off as the time of the enslavement in Egypt, Misraim. Excuse me. This is a time that is spoken of more than once in different scriptures that this time has already passed. Jeremiah talks about it in a couple of places, chapter 16, chapter 23. Acts talk about it in chapter 7, verse 6 and 7. Galatians talk about it in chapter 3, verse 15 through 17, I believe that is, or close by. And then Acts also talks about it. Acts chapter 7, I just mentioned. Let's see. But the 430 years that happened wasn't a mistake. You can also go to Exodus chapter 12, and it also explains the day you went in is the day that you came out. And so 430 years is not an error, neither is 400 years in error. So, so what do we have to do to further understand 400 years? Let's first break it down into jubilees. Every jubilee is 50 years, and so right here we're talking about 8 jubilees, and so that's a 400-year period of time that will be documented, proven throughout the world actually, and proven that Israel was among the nations. And so this is the promise that Yahweh made concerning Israel in the book of Jeremiah, verse 29, chapter 29, verse 11, where it says, I know the plans I have for you, to give you an expected end. And so chapter 30 also speaks concerning it, and it talks about when 70 years are complete in Babylon, I shall bring you back to this place. So there's several things that are going on with the timeline and the end time. I mentioned the 70-year period, which is when Jerusalem was burnt down in 70 AD. And so here we are once again on the other end, where now it has been reestablished in the name of Israel, and we are now coming up, we are on the 70th year. And so the 70th year and a 400th year, I believe, are coming together. They're merging, and very soon here. And so I think it's something that we need to pay a lot of attention to. So let's continue to move on. So Proverbs chapter 25, verse 2. It is the esteem of Elohim to hide a matter, and the esteem of sovereigns to kings to search them out, or to search out a matter. And so right here, I wanted to bring a couple of things to your attention, which is 2 years after the flood, there was a shift in time. What I've done is a study on the births in the genealogy of the patriarchs, the names that Yahweh have given us, the children, those who were born to Israel. They were well, let me say it like this. During the time of the flood, we can use all of the genealogy to get to the time of the flood, which is 1656. And so with that being said, there was a 2-year added to where the firstborn of Shem was born, which his son was Apakshad. And with that, I added into my search, which I'm not going to go through now because that's teaching in itself. And then Abraham is our other very important timeline. So we have the flood of Noah, and then we have the birth of Abraham and his timeline. Now we know that at the age of 75, he left his father's homeland, and he began to sojourn to a place that Yahweh said I would show you. And so what I want to introduce is that there was a 5-year wait before he left. So therefore, he was really told at the age of 70. And so these are little pieces, yet they make so much a difference, of a huge difference when it comes to looking up timeline and understanding timeline. And so moving on from there, let's go to Jeremiah chapter 29 and verse 10. For thus saith Yahweh, when 70 years are completed at Babel, I shall visit you and establish my good word towards you, to bring you back to this place. Chapter 30, verse 10 and 11. And you do not fear, O Yaakov, Jacob, my servant, declares Yahweh, nor be discouraged, O Yisrael, for look, I am saving you from afar and your seed from the land of their captivity. And Yaakov shall return and have rest and be at ease, with no one to trouble him. For I am with you, declares Yahweh, to save you, though I make a complete end of all Gentiles where I have scattered you, yet I do not make a complete end of you. But I shall reprove you in judgment, and by no means leave you unpunished. All right, so let's begin to understand. Jeremiah 29, verse 10, he gives us the amount of years that they were to be in Babylon, which is 70 years. Now, here's the conflict that as you find, as you search for Jubilee and the Shemitah year, you will find that they stayed an extra 30 years. Now, I know you can't see it on the screen, some difficulties with the screen, but we'll get that straight another time. But let's see something here. Okay. I just realized something that I still had in front of the camera. So just forgive me on this. We're still trying to get equipment and things together. But anyway, just listen to my voice and I'll try to carry us on through. So 70 years. Looking at Ezekiel chapter 4, verse 4 through 6 tells us that Yahweh said a year for a day, and he told Ezekiel to lay on his right side and then his left side. On his right side for 40 days, and then on his left side for 390 days. And so a year for a day is what I'll put on Jerusalem for their crookedness or their sins. And so right here we can see where Yahweh says 70 years. And so when 70 years are complete, I'm going to bring you back. And so what happened to the 40 years? Well, he added another 30 years for something that I'll get into a little later, which is a 30-year difference. But I believe that was a down payment on something that we can discuss a little later. But in the book of Matthew, it says, I'm going to release you early. So I thought I'd throw that on out there, but I'll get to it a little later. And then Jeremiah chapter 30, verses 10 through 11. Once again, he's speaking to Yaakov or Jacob, and he says, I'm saving you from afar, your seed from the land of their captivity. And so here again, Yahweh is speaking not only to the Babylonian captivity, but he's talking about the captivity that have gone through all the nations where slavery has been a huge part of the buildup of the nations. And slavery was a major economic incentive for nations to enslave nations. But anyway, let's continue to go, and you know I'm kind of moving through that. We have much more to go to, so let me continue to move on. Let's look for our Jubilee. Again, I wish you can see my notes here, but because of the whatever I touched to rearrange the camera, the numbers are not going to come out, but I'll read them out to you. So let's look at Jubilee and the year of release, or the Shemitah year, according to Yahweh's timeline and not ours. And so I've already spoken on the generations, the begats. These are the things that, and Adam begot Seth at 130 years of age. And so why did he move beyond Cain and Abel? And he went straight to the 130th year. Well, that is on purpose. So, and for the purpose of timeline, this is what I'm using it for. But let's go back to the year 2448, which is what I come up with when I put all the genealogies together to figure out the timeline. And so to add 50 years, now let me tell you what I'm doing before I continue. When he came out of Egypt, Moshe was told to sound the Yobel. He made 2 silver trumpets, and those trumpets were to sound the Yobel. And to sound the Yobel, the trumpets were a signal that they were coming out of bondage, coming out of Egypt, coming out of land of multiple gods. And so where else can we start to figure out the time, or the Shemitah or Jubilee, which both are very important to this timeline. So looking at the timeline, once again, 2448 is the year that I come up with. You add 50 years to that, you have 2498. You add another 50 years, and you have 2548. Thus follows 2598, 2648, 2698, 2748, 2798. And so the question is, how do we reconcile time when we're now at 2018? Getting ready to go into 2019. So in order to do that, let's just say Yeshua came in the 4th day, and that's 4,000 years. And take the 2018, add that on, we got 6,018 years at this point since the time of Adam. Now, I'm just going to drop that there and leave it. I've done extensive research on the birth lines of the patriots to come up with my numbers. And so there's information out there. All you have to do is do the research, and many people will be able to, do what I have done. So it's nothing deep and wonderful about my brain. It's just that Yahweh gave me one, and I appreciate it, so I use it. So thank you, Yahweh. All right, so I see some of you are writing in. Hey, I got Russell out here. Great, man. Good to have you out here. And some other folks. So thank you. Thank you for being on. Okay, so getting back to what we're looking at, I want to go to the year 1848, which is a very significant year. Add another 50 years, 1898, 1948, and we're talking AD now. These are very important timelines for us to understand in this year or this era. Israel was redeemed in the year of 1948. So from 1948 to this present year, we have a 70-year period of time that has just now come in. And so why is this very important, starting with the year 1848? The year 1848, the language was restored in the land of Israel, which those who begin to migrate, the land has not yet been reclaimed, but some people begin to go into the land and fight for independence through the nations, that is. So the language, which was a dead language for almost 2,000 years, once again, we have the Hebrew language. And so that's a beginning, a very strong beginning, the language being restored. Next, the land was restored. Now, I do want to say that all of the land has not been restored yet, because the promise that was given to Abraham was from the Nile River to the Euphrates. And so that's much more land than what is there now. So, just hang with me, and, we'll make sense of this. We'll make sense of it. But here we go. 2048 is our next Jubilee. Let me backtrack just a little bit. When was the last Jubilee? According to when they came out of Egypt, using those numbers coming all the way forward, every 50 years, which is very easy to do. You have 2 Jubilees every century. So that makes real easy counting. So I told you the 4,000 and the 2018. It makes sense. Let me prove something. When was Abraham born? Now, you can go into the genealogy and you can do all the numbers of the firstborn, or the one that was mentioned, and you will see that Abraham was born in the year 1948 from Adam, not AD, because remember, they switched up time on us. But Daniel chapter 7, verse 25 tells us that he desires to switch appointed times and laws. And speaking of Hasatan, Satan, and that's exactly what it did. Now, once again, let's go to the next Jubilee. Well, once again, the last Jubilee was 1998. And so you add another 50 years to that, will be then 2048. And so 2048 being the next Jubilee, I believe that during the Babylonian captivity, Yahweh stretched out their time in captivity, added another 30 years, so that when he gets to Matthew and say, I'm going to cut time short, that he's not, so to speak, just cutting into time haphazardly, but he has a rhythm to what he's doing. So you take the next Jubilee and take 30 years away from that, and what do you have? 2018. And so there's a 30-year that was paid in advance for the kingdom of Judah. So let's say Revelation talks about mystery Babylon. So whoever was in natural Babylon, now we got 3 Babels. Babel, the Tower of Babel, that was under Nimrod. So that was the original rebellious natured one. That's gone. Then you have Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon. I'm hoping I'm remembering correct. But anyway, you know what I'm saying. The king of Babylon, who enslaved Israel once again. And so as they enslaved Israel, Yahweh said 70 years, right? But he said first, 30 30 years, 40 years, according to Ezekiel chapter 4, verses 4 through 6. All right, check it out, check it out. But again, you take that 30 that was already extended, and when he says, I'm cutting time short, he's really cutting time short from the next Jubilee. And I'm going to just leave that right there. So we're looking at some very important timeline. And so I want to now prove out the Shemitah. I want to move over to Shemitah, going back to 2448. And I'm sure you may be asking, where does he get that timeline again? 2448. And so once again, I'm using the births of the patriarchs from Adam all the way to the flood, which was 1656. Remember, Yahweh gives us those timelines. And Noah was age 600 when the flood came in, right? And his firstborn, Shem, was 102 years of age when he had a pox shed. So I have an extensive background on numbers that I'm giving you. So I'm not just throwing something at you. But now let's go back to Misraim, or Egypt, and begin to reconcile numbers. Now, using sevens, 7 plus 7 plus 7 plus 7, we can come all the way up to today. And so with that being said, that's a lot of sevens. So let's just cut through the chase and use some nice round figures. We know that 7, we got 70, we got 700, which are all factors of 7, right? Leaving no remainders. Excuse me. And that's the main thing, that when you're dealing with numbers, you want to make sure that you satisfy your ledger or your numbers so that all things are matching and equal. So in other words, 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42, 49, 56, 63, and 70. And so each one of those are factors of 70, which every 7th year, the law is to release the slaves. And then the 50th one says, all slaves go back to the original owner, and the slaves go back to their family. And so we can see that that's not something that was done or observed by the other nations. And so what I wanted to do is, I'll get to this in just a second, but let me just give another huge number. All right, so 2048 plus 3,500. Now, and I'm using a big number. Like I said, you can use 700, you can use 7, you can use 70s, you can use 700, you can use 1,400, or you can use 3,500. 7 goes into 5 equally, leaving no remainder. And so what I did is I just took a huge jump and said 3,500 instead of 35. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times 7 is 35. So it would be the same thing with 3,500. And so you have 500 instead of just 5. But anyway, I don't want to swing into the numbers, because I'm told sometimes that's where people kind of turn off and lose. I can lose people, but I enjoy numbers. I am a teacher by nature. So, but I'm just going to keep it very simple and just show you some things that I found hidden in the numbers, in plain view, as Yahweh has given us a great deal of information concerning timelines, end times, when he shall return. All of these things are hidden in plain view. But remember, those having ears not able to hear, eyes not able to see. And so I was curious as to how many Shemitahs have gone past since the time of Egypt. And so what I did is I took that 3,500 plus the 2,448, added them together, and I came up with 5,948. I've done all these numbers already, so that's why you see me reading off of my PowerPoint, which I have here for you. But again, whatever the technology, we'll figure out later. But moving on, again, that give me 5948, which is Jubilee. Remember, every 48, every 98 is a Jubilee according to coming out of Egypt. That's done deal. You can't do nothing with that. If we are correct in using the timeline of the births of the patriots to calculate, then to the coming out of Egypt was very easy. Let me just give it to you this way. I'm gonna give you two moves. Using 2448 as our base number, and so using the timeline for the first 20 patriots, and each of them are named from Adam to Abraham. So again, that's why I gave you some other numbers to show you the offset. I don't want to confuse the issue right now. I'm kind of scared to go into this because it might throw some of your thinking off. But you need to account for certain moves of Yahweh. And this is why I read Proverbs 25, verse 2, where it's Yahweh's honor to hide a matter, but it's the honor of kings to search them out. And so he does hide things, but in plain sight. And so having ears to not hear, having eyes can't see. This is this generation. So, but he reveals it to those whom he chooses to. And so I wanted to know how many Shemitahs were in the time of Jubilee to present day. And so going to 2011, which is another Shemitah year, not a Jubilee, but Shemitah, 7 years. Remember, I'm now doing every 7 years since the time of Egypt. I came up with 509 Jubilees as of 2011. Now, I mentioned 2011 because there were some major shifts in the earth where, again, I won't have time to go into it, but we got 7 trumpets that Yahweh gives us of signs in the book of Revelation. And I just want to say straight out right here that I'm seeing the signs of the trumpets beginning to blow. And as I see them, I can trace it back to 2011 when I've seen the first sign of the first trumpet. When you begin to break down what are the trumpets, I'll give you the first one. The first one is extreme weather related. So it is a warning, warning the sons of the earth that the Messiah is on his way. I mean, don't they always sound the trumpet when the king is on his way? So, hey, the king is on his way. There's 7 trumpets in the heavens that are beginning to sound the trumpets that Yahweh is coming. I know I said Yahweh, but Yahweh is Yeshua. Yeshua is Yahweh. I have no problems with that. Yeshua said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Philip said, show us the Father. He said, have I been with you so long that you don't know who I am? And so he asked Peter, who do people say I am? So I don't want to shift right now because I got too much I want to try to get to you. So I'm gonna bring it back in. I'm gonna bring it back in and continue with my numbers because I'm supposed to be out of this by now. So as of this year, add 7 to 2011. That brings you to 2018. Whoa. Now add 30 to that. That brings you to the next Jubilee, 2048. And so we're not there yet. So am I telling you something? Yes, I am. I'm telling you that the king is at the door and he's ready to come. And so when you see all of these things begin to manifest, understand and know that he is at the door. I'm getting ahead of myself, but let's continue to move. Still looking at the Shemitah, or the year of release, Daniel chapter 9, verses 1 and 2. In the first year of Darius, the son of Rosh, of the seed of the Medes, and so you know I'm now talking about the statue from chapter 2 that Daniel spoke about. But again, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I just wanted to bring you into what I'm switching over to. Of the seed of the Medes, who was set up as sovereign over the reign of the Chaldeans in the first year of his reign. I, Daniel, who's talking? Daniel, observed from the scriptures the number of years according to the word of Yahweh, given to Jeremiah the prophet, for the completion of the wastes of Jerusalem would be 70 years. Whoa, there's that 70 again. And so with the 70 years, it must be true, because remember, Daniel went into captivity and he was there for the whole 70-year period. Now, you remember the many scriptures, and many times you've heard the stories of the 3 Hebrew boys. This is that time, okay? And so it was a 70-year period of time from start to finish. And so Jerusalem was demolished and taken into captivity, but they did return in the 70th year. Now, I'm not saying at the beginning or the end, but at the 70th year, they returned to rebuild. And so this reminds me also of the year of release, once again, the book of Revelation, and how so it talks about a 1260-day period of time where the 2 witnesses would be in the earth, and judgment would be going on. And so this is part of the trumpets, which is a 7-year period of time, which is why I went back to 2007. And so now that we're coming into the 70th year, we're actually right at the edge of the 70th year. We haven't gone very far in it at all. It's at a beginning, and I don't want to go too far into that, but using the holy days of the Bible, the Sabbath days of the Bible, you can begin to understand how Yahweh has set up the Moedims, or the appointed times, according to the events of Sabbath, which is a weekly Sabbath, but then there's annual Sabbath. And so with these annual Sabbaths, and there's 7 of them, they explain to us a timeline far beyond anything man himself and his infinite wisdom can come up with. But anyway, I don't want to digress too far from what I need to, or where I need to be. So Daniel chapter 12, verse 9 and 10. And he said, "Go, Daniel, for the words are hidden," whoa, hidden, "and sealed until the time of the end." Until the time of the end. "Many shall be cleansed and made white and refined. But the wrong shall be wrong, and none of the wrong shall understand." The wrong won't understand. "But those who have insight, shall understand." So you mean to tell me there are some who understand? Let me read that part again. "But those who have insight shall understand." And this is why the messenger came to Daniel to explain to him, and Yahweh said, "Make him understand." So by the time we get to chapter 1 and chapter 2, chapter 3, he don't understand. But by the time he gets to chapter 10 to chapter 12, he understands. And he says, "I, Daniel, observed from the scriptures the number of years according to the word of Yahweh." And what was the word made? What? Flesh. And so he saw the first coming of Yeshua, and he saw his second coming. But, you know, we only reflect on his first visitation. But what Daniel was focusing on to let us know and understand, this is why Yeshua, even in the book of Revelation, in the book of Matthew, chapter 24, chapter 25, 10 virgins, he says in chapter 24, when he says, as told to Daniel, the prophet, right? So where are you going to go? You're going to go back to Daniel to begin to understand exactly what Yahweh was telling him, so that we can understand that he's speaking to us as well in this day and time. And so when he says to Daniel, go and hide the word until the time of the end. So if we're in the end time, so then this should be the time that the word now should be revealing itself. And so this is all that I'm trying to get to you and show you that the word is now being revealed. And so I know you can't read the images, but I'll read it out. Daniel chapter 2. Here is the image or the statue of gold. The head of gold, which was the Babylonian kingdom, the chest and arm of silver, which was the Medes and the Persian kingdom. You know, Persia is Iran today. Belly and thighs of bronze, the kingdom of ancient Greece, and the legs and thigh here, which was ancient Rome. Now, you know, we were given 1, 2, 3, 4 4 measures of kingdoms over generations of time. And so here we are now coming into the stone, where it's time for the stone to topple the statue. And what this is truly about is a timeline. And so with this timeline, Yahweh gave to Daniel, he actually gave it to the king, Nebuchadnezzar. And so when he gave it to King Nebuchadnezzar, Daniel interpreted it and said, he has given you the plan of Yahweh. And so with the plan of Yahweh, this stone represents Yeshua, topples the statue because the feet are very special. The feet, which are of iron and clay, is a revised nation. Remember, Rome divided out into 10 nations, and all the other nations became part of the Roman Empire. And and this last kingdom, though, will be Yeshua, because he will topple the statue, or the kingdom of man is coming to an end, and the kingdom of Yahweh is everything I'm trying to tell you is getting ready to begin. Are you ready? Are you ready for Yahweh? Here's Matthew's. Let's look at what Yeshua said in the book of Matthew's. Matthew's chapter 24, verse 4 through 13. And let's kind of get a view of what it looks like. Hopefully my lighting come back through. Well, anyway, I'm gonna keep moving. Yeshua, he's sitting on the Mount of Olives, and this is chapter 24. I'm sitting on the Mount of Olives, and they begin to come to him. His disciples, or taught ones, begin to come to him and ask him a question. Tell us when these things be. And he's saying that the temple, see, not one stone will remain on top of another. And so during this time, they began to wonder, what was he speaking concerning? When was he going to return? Because now he's conveying to them that he too must go, but he will return. And so they want to know, when are you going to return? When are all these things going to take place, such as the temple being destroyed? Remember, they asked, how are you going to destroy this temple and raise it up in 3 days? And so they were very much the others were very much confused as to what was he talking about. And so, and these are not all entire scriptures, but understand the parts. No one leads you astray. Be sure that no one leads you astray. I guess I got to slow it down. Some would come and say, I am the Messiah, and they would lead many astray. There would be fighting and reports of fightings, rain against rain, scarcity of food, deadly disease, and earthquakes in diverse places. I told you the trumpets, they're sounding. We're having earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, things are happening. All of this is not the end, but he says it is the birth pains. What birth pains? Of Israel being born in the earth. And in the book of Malachi, I think it's the 3rd chapter, he says that, and he shall sit as a refiner and restore the sons of Levi. And so in restoring the sons of Levi, let's see if we can get this to cooperate. Just trying to get my lighting to come back in. Okay, let me try something. All right, we'll see if that works. All right, now, this is the beginning of birth pains, and you would know it because it is a time of increased lawlessness. But he who shall have endured to the end shall be saved. And so, once again, Yahweh's salvation is on the way. And so, again, still looking at Yeshua's words in the book of Matthew, chapter 24, verses 31 through 37. And I'm going to compare this to the year 1948 AD. And we're talking about the beginning of matters, not the end. There's a process by which things are happening and will happen. And he shall send his messenger or messengers with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his chosen ones from the 4 winds, from one end of the heavens to the other, and learn this parable of the fig tree. When its branches have already become tender and put forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So you also, when you see all these, know that he is near at the door. Truly, I say to you, this generation shall by no means pass away until all this takes place. The heavens and the earth shall pass away, but my word shall by no means pass away. But concerning that day and the hour, no one knows, not even the messengers of heaven or angels, but my Father only. And as the days of Noah, so also shall the coming of the Son of Adam be. And so I want to reach back and say that the beginning of this prophecy that we can see is 1948, when the land itself was also restored. Not only was the language 100 years prior, but then the land itself was captured in a war that never took place, but in one day. So even prophecy of Isaiah being manifested, where he says, oh, look, who has ever heard that a nation comes into place in one day? And so with so much of the prophecies of the prophets that are now coming forward, we have gotten away from understanding the prophets to looking at the prophet, for hire prophets who are now, speaking not concerning lawlessness and righteousness, but, name it, claim it. That's not where we should be. But anyway, remember, leading many astray. But anyway, I want to stay where I'm at. A great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his chosen ones. And so learn the parable of the fig tree. So let's begin to put this together. The fig tree. The fig tree. This fig tree was someone's creation. I just did a cut and paste. And thank you for the author of this beautiful illustration. So what I have is spring, summer, autumn, winter. And so here's a tree, the fig tree. Got stuck there for a second. The fig tree. And what is the parable that he wants us to understand? When you see the leaves, know that summer is near. And so right here, as there are leaves on the tree, there's 2 times a year that produces a major harvest. The first one is lesser of the 2. The first one is during the month of our timing, June and July. And so you see leaves on the tree. And so this is according to Jerusalem. But then it's later on when there's a greater harvest. So the latter end is greater, far greater than the beginning. So this is like around your Shavuot period of time, or Pentecost, giving of the Holy Spirit, giving of the commandments. And so here we have the time of August through September, which is a harvest 10 times greater than the first one. And so with the latter harvest, or the latter rain, the greater harvest comes. And so so I'm pointing at the summertime now, which is the time of the first harvest, which is your summer. Which is your summer of June, July. And during the August, September time frame, then you have 10 times more of the tree fruit. And for some reason, I know I already said it, but I'm drawing a blank. But the fig tree, oh my goodness, what in the world? Okay, so the fig tree produces 10 times more, 10 times more, okay? And so during the wintertime, there is no harvest. There is none. And so I believe when Yeshua went and looked at the fig tree for figs, the scripture says that it was out of season. And so he cursed the fig tree. And so I want you to understand that that was going back to the garden. Remember what Adam and Eve hid themselves behind? The fig tree, right? And so with that fig leaf, they hid themselves and were shamed because they knew that they were naked and became ashamed. Moving on, I don't want to stray from where I'm at, because I have a little bit more. Hopefully that I can get as much as I can get in, because this is a big teaching. I know I'm not going to finish it, but I'm going to do the best I can. So I'm going to move from here as well. And so let's begin to understand what a generation is. What is a generation? Looking at timeline through Yahweh's eyes and not ours. A lot of people misconstrued the time in the wilderness, 40 years, as a generation. No, let's let the scriptures or the Bible define for us what is a generation. Daniel chapter 4, verse 3. How great are his signs, and how mighty his wonders. His reign is an everlasting reign, and his rulership is from generation to generation. Daniel chapter 6, verse 27. He delivers and rescues, and he works signs and wonders in the heavens and on earth. For he has delivered Daniel from the power of the lions. Now, remember I said that Daniel spoke to us of two different times of Yeshua in the earth. And so right here is the proof that his reign is an everlasting reign. His rulership is from generation to generation. Question, has that been fulfilled yet? In a sense, yes, but not to the natural sense where he will be reigning king over kings. The government from Jerusalem, the Lord will go out from Jerusalem with Yeshua as the reigning king. And so that has not been fulfilled yet. But he also talked about when he rescued him from the lion's jaws. And so you can see that he speaks of, it was this same Yeshua who rescued me from the lion's den. And so signs and wonders, he delivers and rescues, and he works signs and wonders in the heavens and on earth. Okay, so he's talking about Yahweh, who is Yeshua, Yeshua, who is Yahweh. And so moving on, Psalms chapter 90, verse 10. Here's the definition of a generation. The days of our lives are 70 years, or if due to strength, 80 years. Yet the best of them is but turmoil and exertion, for it is soon cut off, and we fly away. So a generation is 70 years, with strength 80 years. And so I want to use that 70-year period of time as the beginning of the first generation. And so now that we've gone to a 70-year period of time, remember it says, or if due to strength, 80 years, yet best of them is but toil and exertion, for it is soon cut off and we fly away. And so he's speaking very natural here and giving us understanding that since the time of our fathers in the wilderness, the time of our parents in the garden, because of the original sin, the time of man have been cut drastically. In the very beginning, Adam and Eve, Hava, were created perfect. So there was no timeline. But the moment that Adam sinned, time kicked in and became 1,000 years. And so, I know I'm giving you some more understanding of timeline itself. I see the light came in the way I want it to be, but okay, I'm going to have to just leave it. But anyway, understanding time, Yahweh gave us in his word, but it's hidden in plain sight. And so when he said to Noah, know that the days of man are short, because my being can no longer be with him in his heart going astray. And so he said 120 years. So now let's take a jubilee, which is 50, and multiply that times the 120. That gives you 6,000. Just very easy math I'm giving you now. And so that was in the beginning and right after the fall. But before the fall, man was perfect, and there was no expiration date. But now, and where's our proof? Methuselah. Methuselah lived to be 969 years of age. And so with Methuselah being 969, he was the oldest known recorded man. Adam himself lived 930 years. What's that? Short 70 years of one day. And so with that being said, there's that 70, that theme of 70 again. And so, and it moved even from that to 1,000 years being one day, as 1,000 years with Yahweh is one day. You know what I'm saying? But I'm rushing because I'm trying to get this to you. And then it went from there to 70, which is where we are now. And so it went from eternity to 120, left 120 and went to 70 plus 10 at best. And so I'm seeing my light is coming back in right here. So I don't know what I did to, or what happened for it to come back in. I understand now. Okay, we'll have that fixed for next time. But anyway, so that 70-year period of time is a timeline that I'm going to be keeping my eyes on, a close proximity, keeping my eyes on prophecy and things that are happening to us even to this day. So like I said, we just now come into a 70-year period of time. And so with that said, now we really need to begin to look at what is going on around us. So let's look at some signs of the abomination that lays waste that Yeshua speaks of. When you see the abomination that lays waste. Here's a post from the Worldwide News, April 18th, and these are clips on the net where I pulled in some things that I saw that were out there. I do a lot of research, and so this is part of my research, looking at things and events that have taken place. Remember, he said it was going to be as the days of Noah, that they didn't even know until the rain began and the doors were shut. And so if it's going to be the same way, and he says that some of us would know, then we have to know that Yeshua in the 25th chapter of Malachi, he gave us a great insight, which he says the kingdom of heaven is as 10 virgins, 5 foolish, 5 wise. So the time of his return is a time where not everyone believes the right thing or are doing the right thing to make it in. Now, and we're talking about believers, but what is it that you believe? What is it that you do? According to what James said, show me your works without faith, and I'll show you my faith by my works. And so when he was saying this, what he's showing you is, by my works, you understand what I believe. And so there is a work according to Yahweh, his people, which is your Sabbath, your holy days, eating kashrut, or eating, because we are the temple. So what are you putting into your temple? Leviticus chapter 11 tells us what we can and cannot eat, and those things that are abomination to us. But anyway, let me bring it back. Let me bring it back. Okay, here we go. Signs of the abomination that lays waste, and I define this by that which is detestable lays waste. And so April 18th, 2014, the 15th was Passover. And so the Pope said, Jesus not coming back by the looks of it. And so this was an article put out by the Vatican, who was backing the Pope, Pope Francis. The Vatican defines Jesus' broken promise, claiming he was probably drinking wine at the time when he made this comment. And so, of course, when he was saying that he was going to return, and when he would return, they the Vatican is now saying he's not coming back, and some other things. Let me read the next one. July 6, 2015, Pope Francis said to Christians around the world that God has called upon him, instructing him to revise the most sacred of texts, the 10 Commandments. The Pope said that the updates or the updated commandments reflect the changing times and include some minor wording of the existing ones, as well as the additions of 2 new commandments. And so the 4th commandment, the 5th commandment, the 7th commandment, and he added an 11th commandment. And so the 4th, keeping the Sabbath, he's changed that. The 7th, he actually took that one away. The 4th and 5th, he reworded, in other words. But the 7th, he erased that one and written a new one, which is, you shall not commit adultery. That no longer applies according to the Vatican. And then he did a whole new one, and there's 11 commandments now. And so just checking my lighting again. The 11th commandment, according to the Pope. And so what has he laid waste? He's laying waste the most sacred, the most holy words of Yahweh, which goes back to Mount Sinai when they came out of Egypt. And coming out of Egypt, there's a covenant that if you do this, and then I will be your savior. And so a little bit more on the abomination. Pope Francis declares that all religions are true and Adam and Eve are a fable. The church no longer believes in a literal hell where people suffer. This doctrine is incomparable with the infinite love of God. God is not a judge, but a friend of a lover and a lover of humanity. Yes, God seeks not to condemn, but only to embrace. Like the fable of Adam and Eve, we see hell as a literal device or literary device. Hell is merely a metaphor for isolated soul, which like all souls ultimately will be united in love with God, Pope Francis declared. Like a loving father, we never condemn our children. Our church is big enough for heterosexuals, homosexuals, for the pro-life and the pro-choice, for conservatives and liberals. Even communists are welcome and have joined us. We all love and worship the same God. And so this I picked up from the worldtruth.net site. And at this point, there is another scripture that talks about when you see him in the place, or speaking of the abomination, set up in the place where he should not be. This is an image of what I found online called the upper room, where both David and Yeshua gave Pesach or Passover meals. And this is where the Pope himself was able to give the worldwide address to all nations or Christians. And can you see this as a place that he should not have been, that he may have desecrated? And so what I'm going to do, because I'm going to go ahead and begin to close out, here is a message concerning Damascus. And so using Isaiah chapter 17, I want to show you why I believe that we are in this time. Isaiah chapter 17, verse 1, the message concerning Damascus. See, Damascus cease to be a city and shall become a heap of ruin. Verse 3, and the stronghold shall cease from Ephraim, and the rain from Damascus, and the remnant of Aram be as the esteem of the sons of Israel, declares Yahweh of hosts. Verse 7, in that day man shall look to his maker, and his eyes turn to the set apart one of Israel. And so these 3 verses, I wanted to show you that give me a very strong belief that looking at Syria right now, when did Syria fall? In 2011. And so 2011 to this very day, there's a proxy war between the United States and Russia that is not spoken of, but we have many nations with us on each side that are fighting against Assad. And so with that said, Yahweh said that Damascus would be a sign. Why Damascus? Because it is one of the oldest cities in the world. And as of one of the oldest cities in the world, excuse me on that, with the oldest city in the world being Damascus, continuous city, has now just in the last few years fallen. And so as they have fallen, that is a sign of the return. In that day, man shall look to his maker, and his eyes turn to the set apart one of Israel. And so let me just kind of show you some things, and we're going to close out with the trumpets that are blowing. Show you just a few images. If you can, I know that you can see these images, that Israel itself, excuse me, not Israel, but the nations are now going into stress. And so this is Saudi Arabia. And if you see these are cars, and look at the cars, we're talking desert. We're talking not a lot of rain. They received just November 16th and 17th, they received 6 years worth of rain in 2 days. And look at the cars. This is street. And so continuing on, a closer look at different images that we're seeing around the world. And so this is John's dream that he saw 1/3 of the ships. And so 1/3 of the ships, I finally understood this. To him, he knew that we ride in these. And so when you look at these in the water, they look like some kind of miniature ships, or, ships, but in water. And this is what he saw. He saw cars. He wouldn't call it what we call it today, but it is vehicles that move us from place to place. So this is 1/3 of the ships, 1/3 of the trees, 1/3 of the livestock, 1/3 of mankind is taking place. Here again, Saudi Arabia, snow. I told you which was the first trumpet. And here's some more images. This is California, fire. If you see right here is an image of a tornado fire. Where have we seen that but in the wilderness? So I believe Yahweh, and this is recent. Matter of fact, this is paradise that was burned, and they're having to leave out in order to get away from the fire. But anyway, I'm going to stop here, because right here is I didn't get to everything, but I pray that you forgive me. I tried to get out as much as I could, but all I'm saying to you that the time is now, and we need to be seeking Yahweh with all of our heart and all that we do. And so there's nothing else but Yahweh and the kingdom that is getting ready to reign over the earth. And so once again, he shall bring in his people, and the kingdom of Yahweh shall reign. Hallelujah. Thank you once again for joining us. I'm Rabbi James Byers, and join us again each week when we come to you on YouTube live streaming. Hallelujah.